I was actually standing in my kitchen this morning, just staring at that little plastic bottle of multivitamins sitting right next to the coffee maker.
Oh, yeah. A very familiar morning routine for most of us.
Exactly. It's such a mundane object, right? You pop the safety cap, take the pill, swallow it with some water, and you just get on with your day. It feels like the absolute simplest thing in the world.
It does, until you actually look at the machinery behind it.
Right. And that's exactly what happened. I opened up the source material we're covering today. This comprehensive market report on the vitamins industry dated February 2026, and it completely reframed that little bottle for me.
It's quite the read, isn't it?
It's like pulling a loose thread and suddenly realizing it's attached to a tapestry that covers half the world.
It really is a red pill moment. Once
Yeah.
you see the actual supply chain behind that capsule, you just can't unsee it. We tend to think of vitamins as these simple health boosters, almost like food items.
Yeah, like an apple or something.
Exactly. But the reality described in these sources is that the industry is this massive intersection of advanced geopolitics, cutting-edge biotechnology, and a really intense war over truth in labeling.
That's the perfect way to frame it. So the mission for our deep dive today is to peel back that label for you. We aren't just looking at, basic health trends. We're looking at how the industry is evolving from simple, shelf-stable commodities into this high-tech, personalized, and heavily regulated machine.
And we have a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. From the biology of bone health to the actual robotics of manufacturing.
Because it is a high-stakes machine now, we're talking about a massive shift from simply preventing scurvy to optimizing human performance, and the engineering required to pull that off is staggering.
So let's start with the product itself. The report highlights a fundamental shift in what you, the consumer, are actually buying. It seems like the era of the solo vitamin where you just buy a bottle of C and a separate bottle of E is effectively ending.
Oh, it is fading incredibly fast. The industry term for it, according to the report, is the shift from solo ingredients to integrated vitamin portfolios.
Integrated portfolios.
Right. Because if you think about how vitamins were sold, say, 20 years ago, it was very disjointed. It was entirely up to the consumer to play chemist. You had to just inherently know you needed vitamin C for this issue and E for that one.
Yeah, and now you walk down the aisle and you don't really see ingredients anymore. You see outcomes. You look at a label and it says immune support or bone longevity.
Exactly. Consumers are done with the chemistry set approach. They want a symphony, not a solo instrument. And to deliver a specific health outcome, you need synergy.
Right.
The report uses the bone health example, which I thought was really telling regarding how much the underlying science has evolved.
I actually bookmarked that exact section. It's fascinating because for years, the mainstream advice was just drink your milk, take your calcium pill. But the report suggests that's basically outdated science now.
It is entirely outdated. We now know that calcium, without the right cofactors, can actually be highly problematic. If you just flood the body with pure calcium, it might end up calcifying your arteries instead of actually strengthening your bones.
Which is terrifying.
It is. So a modern bone health stack, the kind you're seeing in 2026, involves calcium, yes, but it's intimately paired with vitamin D3 to ensure absorption from the gut, magnesium for structural integrity, and this is the really key one, vitamin K2.
Because K2 is basically the traffic cop, right?
Precisely. Vitamin K2 directs that calcium directly into the bone matrix and actively keeps it out of the soft tissues.
Wow.
So when you see a bone health bottle on the shelf today, it's not just a rock crushed into a powder anymore. It is a highly pre-engineered bioavailability stack designed to ensure the minerals go exactly where they are supposed to go.
And we see that same exact thing in cognitive health, right? Which the text identifies as one of the fastest growing sectors right now.
That's a massive driver for the market. And again, it's all about the blend. It's usually a specific profile of B-complex vitamins, so B6, B12, folate mixed with vitamin D, and often omega-3 fatty acids. The entire idea is to create what the industry calls a cognitive resilience buffer.
I want to dig into that specific term, resilience. What is driving this shift?
Yeah.
Is it just that the science is getting better, or is the consumer actually changing?
The report points to a convergence of three distinct things. First, obviously, is just general rising health consciousness.
Sure.
But the second driver is what the text calls the silver economy. We have rapidly aging populations globally.
But they aren't aging the way their parents did, are they?
Not at all. They are aging aggressively. This demographic isn't looking for standard care. They're looking for performance. They want to stay in the workforce longer. They want to stay active longer.
Right. They're running marathons at 70.
Exactly. They view supplements not as a passive safety net, but as active ammunition. A single vitamin C pill feels like a pea shooter when you're fighting cognitive decline. They want the heavy artillery, which means those complex blends we talked about.
And then the third driver mentioned was personalized nutrition. This is where the tech aspect really kicks in for me.
Oh, this is huge. People are constantly wearing Oura rings, Apple watches, continuous glucose monitors. They have mountains of personal data. They aren't just guessing in the dark anymore.
They know exactly what's wrong.
Right. They are demanding products that precisely match their specific biometric data profile. They're saying, my blood work says I'm low on D and high on homocysteine, so I need this specific B-complex blend.
That has to put a massive amount of pressure on the manufacturers, doesn't it? Because if I'm buying a specific blend based on my actual blood work, I need to know that blend is mathematically legitimate. I'm not just buying a vague feeling anymore. I'm buying a biochemical intervention.
Precisely. And that leads us directly to a great quote from an industry analyst in the text. They said, the real differentiator for 2026 is credible substantiation.
Credible substantiation.
Yes. You cannot just throw 3 random herbs in a blender and call it brain boost. You have to clinically prove that the synergy exists.
And this segues perfectly into the trust economy section of our notes. Because as the products get more complex and more expensive, the potential for fraud or even just sloppy science goes up exponentially.
It really does, and consumers are becoming incredibly cynical as a result. The text describes this massive, overwhelming demand for what they call the clean label.
Clean label feels like a bit of a marketing buzzword, though. What does it actually mean in the context of this 2026 report?
It has definitely moved way beyond just saying no artificial colors. It now implies total, absolute traceability. Consumers want to know the exact provenance. Where did this magnesium come from? Is it heavily mined or is it synthesized in a lab? Is it third-party verified by an independent lab?
So it's very much a don't tell me, show me environment.
Exactly that.
And social media seems to be pouring absolute gasoline on this fire. The report highlights a real split in how social media impacts the industry.
It's a total double-edged sword. On one side, the good side, you have actual PhDs and biochemists on TikTok and YouTube explaining the intricate differences between, say, methylfolate and basic folic acid.
Right, which is great for education.
It is. That educates the consumer and builds massive, lasting trust for the brands that actually bother to use the high-quality, bioavailable forms.
But then you have the bad side of the algorithm.
The miracle cure side. You have influencers promising that a single gummy will magically fix your thyroid or instantly cure your anxiety. The report notes that this specific behavior is triggering a lot of regulatory heat.
I can imagine.
When a brand gets too loose with their health claims on social media, the regulators, specifically the FTC and FDA in the US, absolutely start paying attention.
And that brings us right into the rule book. I think this is the part of the industry people misunderstand the most. There's this persistent, stubborn myth that the supplement industry is just the Wild West, just completely unregulated chaos.
I hear that all the time. People say, oh, it's totally unregulated. It is factually incorrect. But the reality is highly nuanced, and it depends heavily on where you are on the map.
Let's start with the U.S. landscape, since that's such a huge chunk of the global market. The foundational framework there is DSHEA.
Right, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. Now, critics will loudly say DSHEA is toothless because it doesn't require FDA approval before you launch a product, unlike a pharmaceutical drug.
Right, you just put it out there.
And that is technically true. You can launch without a pre-market stamp of approval. However, you are strictly subject to CGMP.
Current good manufacturing practices.
Yes, and current is the operative word there. It means the standard is continually rising. CGMP mandates that you must scientifically verify the identity, purity, strength, and composition of every single ingredient.
So you can't just guess.
No. If you say there is 500 milligrams of vitamin C in that capsule and a random audit test shows only 450 milligrams, that is legally classified as misbranding. It's illegal. And if there is even a trace contaminant like lead or arsenic, that is adulteration.
So the regulators aren't necessarily checking every single bottle before it hits the retail shelf, but they are vigorously auditing the facilities to make sure the underlying system prevents those errors.
Exactly. It's a system of post-market surveillance. They routinely inspect the factories. If your paperwork isn't absolutely perfect,
They shut you down.
They completely shut you down. But let's contrast that with Europe for a second. The source material highlights the EU context, and it is a completely different beast over there.
Yeah, the novel food regulations, this seemed like a massive, almost insurmountable barrier to entry.
It really is. In Europe, the foundational philosophy is reversed. If you want to use a totally new ingredient, say a rare mushroom extract or a novel peptide that hasn't been traditionally eaten in Europe before 1997, you have to definitively prove it's safe before you can sell a single bottle.
Wow. It's a strict pre-market barrier.
Yes.
So in the US, you can launch quickly and get caught later if you mess up. But in the EU, you can't even launch until you prove you're perfectly safe.
That's the simplified version, but yes, the EU regulatory process is incredibly expensive and notoriously slow. And then recently you have the Brexit complication.
The report mentioned this as a very specific pain point for global brands.
It totally fractured the European regulatory landscape. If you are a global vitamin brand now, you need to simultaneously navigate the UK's Food Standards Agency and the EU's EFSA.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You might need entirely different labels, different compliance checks, and totally separate distribution warehouses. It effectively doubled the red tape overnight for that region.
There was a specific term in the regulatory section that I underlined 3 times while reading: substantiation. It seems like this is the exact battleground where the marketing department meets the law.
This is absolutely the new gold standard for 2026. If you make a basic structure-function claim, something vague like calcium builds strong bones, that's generally okay.
Right.
But if you even slightly imply you are modifying a disease risk, like saying this lowers your risk of heart disease, you better have hard, peer-reviewed clinical data to back that up.
And getting that kind of clinical data is staggeringly expensive.
It's incredibly expensive. The baseline cost of compliance is skyrocketing because you practically need to run a full clinical trial to operate a high-end supplement brand today. You can't just vaguely cite a generic study from 1950 anymore. You need your own proprietary data.
And all of this paperwork, all these intense factory audits, they all rely on one highly specific document, right? The COA.
The Certificate of Analysis. It is basically the passport for every single batch of powder. You cannot buy a drum of vitamin D without it. It traces the batch all the way back to the raw source, lists the heavy metal testing, the microbial testing, the exact potency.
So if there ever is a recall, like if someone gets sick, they can trace it back to the specific day and the specific vat that exact ingredient came from.
In theory, yes, that's exactly how it works. And that intense traceability leads us directly to where the stuff is actually made. Because I really think we need to shatter the mental image of a home kitchen or a simple mixing bowl.
Oh, absolutely. The description of the modern manufacturing floor in the report sounded way more like an Intel semiconductor plant than a bakery.
It's high-tech chemical engineering at this point. First off, you have the underlying supply chain issue. The report notes that raw materials are incredibly volatile right now. Geopolitics, trade wars, even random weather patterns drastically affect the global price of these raw ingredients.
So to combat that, manufacturers are nearshoring.
Right. They are actively trying to move production physically closer to the end consumer, building massive plants in North America or Europe, just to avoid getting their vital supply cut off by a random shipping crisis in the Pacific.
Makes sense.
But the coolest innovation here is how they are actually synthesizing the vitamins now. Did you catch the section on fermentation?
I did, and I definitely want you to unpack that for us because I usually associate fermentation with craft beer or, sourdough bread, but they are using it for complex vitamins.
Precision fermentation. This is a total game changer for the industry. They are genetically engineering microorganisms, very specialized yeast or bacteria, to become tiny little biological factories.
That is why.
You feed them sugar or a specific substrate, and they naturally metabolize it into highly specific B vitamins or specialty compounds like CoQ10.
Why go that incredibly complex route instead of just standard chemical synthesis? Is it just to sound cool on the label?
No, it actually solves 2 massive problems. One, it aligns perfectly with the clean label story we discussed. It's a natural biological process, not a harsh petrochemical one.
Right.
And 2, it allows for incredibly high purity. It's fundamentally cleaner. You get the exact molecule you want without the toxic chemical byproducts you often get from traditional synthesis.
And once you finally have that raw, pure powder from the fermentation tank, the robots basically take over.
Continuous manufacturing. This is a massive leap from the old batch method.
How so?
Well, instead of making a batch, stopping everything, testing it, thoroughly cleaning the machine, and starting again, they use continuous flow technology. Raw materials go in one end, perfectly finished capsules come out the other nonstop.
And the report heavily emphasized digital QA/QC during this process.
Real-time monitoring. Tiny sensors inside the machinery are actively checking the moisture content, the exact weight, and the physical compression of every single pill in milliseconds.
Wait, so they aren't just testing like one pill out of every 1,000 on a tray?
No, they're monitoring the entire process constantly. If a single pill is off by even a fraction of a percent, the machine physically kicks it out off the line automatically.
It totally removes the human error factor.
A robot doesn't get tired at the end of a shift. A robot doesn't lose count. When you are talking about microdosing highly potent ingredients where literal micrograms matter, that level of precision is a strict safety requirement, not just a neat efficiency trick.
It's truly fascinating that we are using this insane level of technology to produce something that is marketed as being perfectly natural. But there's a glaring conflict mentioned in the report that I want to dig into: the packaging paradox.
Yes, this is the massive elephant in the room for the industry. We all want clean label vitamins, and we want them to be perfectly good for the planet. We all hate single-use plastic.
Right, everyone wants paper or glass.
But we also demand that our vitamins stay chemically potent for 2 full years while sitting in a hot, humid bathroom cabinet.
And those two consumer desires actively fight each other.
They fight constantly. Vitamins are inherently fragile chemicals. They hate oxygen, they hate moisture, and they hate UV light. Traditional plastic is actually amazing at blocking those 3 things. Paper, not so much.
So if you put your beautiful, organic, fermentation-derived vitamins in a trendy, biodegradable paper pouch, they might just naturally degrade in a month.
Exactly. They might oxidize rapidly. Then you suddenly have a potency issue, which, as we just discussed, puts you in direct violation of the strict labeling laws. If your label promises 100% potency and the paper bag let humid air in and dropped it to 80%, you are now legally misbranding the product.
Wow. So the industry is just frantically scrambling to find a material that acts exactly like plastic, but biodegrades exactly like paper.
It's a massive material science challenge right now. They are aggressively looking at bioplastics, new glass alloys, recycled polymers, and the big retailers are really forcing the issue now, aren't they? It's not just corporate altruism.
No, the report specifically mentions ESG, environmental, social, and governance scores. Major retailers think the Walmarts, Targets, and Whole Foods of the world are actively demanding strict carbon footprint data from these brands.
Right. If you can't provide the data, or if your packaging is deemed too wasteful, you might literally lose your lucrative shelf space. Sustainability is no longer a nice-to-have marketing point. It's a rigid requirement just to play the game.
So we have the complex science, the heavy regulation, the robotic manufacturing, and the tricky packaging. Let's talk about the business itself. Who is actually pulling the strings here? The report uses the phrase giants versus ghosts.
It sounds a bit dramatic, but it's highly accurate. The giants are the massive upstream suppliers. Companies like DSM, BASF, Lonza, these are massive multi-billion-dollar chemical and biological conglomerates. They make the actual raw ingredients.
So when I buy a cute mom-and-pop vitamin brand from a quirky little website, the actual vitamin C inside probably came from one of these massive giants.
Almost certainly. Very few consumer-facing brands actually synthesize their own raw materials. It's way too capital intensive. But the ghosts are even more interesting to me. These are the contract manufacturers.
The ghostwriters of the pill world.
Right. If you are a famous celebrity and you want to launch a trendy beauty vitamin line by next week, you don't go build a $50 million factory. You call a contract manufacturer. You pick a formula off a menu, or they quickly design a custom one for you, and they manufacture, bottle, and label the whole thing. Your famous name goes on the front, but they did all the actual heavy lifting behind the scenes.
This totally explains why there are so many new brands constantly popping up. The barrier to entry is basically just marketing capital.
Correct. But it also perfectly explains the recent rise of private label, the store brands. It used to be that the generic store brand was always the cheap, low-quality option. But now retailers are just quietly using these exact same top-tier contract manufacturers.
So the cheap store brand might literally be coming off the exact same robotic assembly line as the $60 premium brand.
Very often, yes. The premium brand might have a slightly more proprietary blend or one specific patented ingredient that costs more, but the base manufacturing quality, the safety, the QA/QC of the generic has skyrocketed.
It really seems like the market is bifurcating. You have The ultra-premium, substantiated, clinical trial-backed brands on one end, and then you have these really high-quality private labels squeezing everyone else from the bottom.
That's the exact squeeze. If you are a mid-tier brand with generic ingredients and absolutely no unique clinical science, you are in deep trouble in 2026. You can't compete with the store brand on price, and you can't compete with the premium brand on actual medical trust.
It's a totally fascinating ecosystem. So
Yeah.
to bring this all the way back to that mundane little bottle sitting in my kitchen, we've gone from a simple, thoughtless daily routine to discussing precision fermentation, international trade law, and robotic quality control.
It really is a perfect microcosm of modern world. You have this deeply ancient human desire for health and longevity violently meeting the absolute cutting edge of industrial technology.
And for you listening, the person actually taking these things every morning, what is the ultimate takeaway from all this source material?
The main takeaway is that the era of blind faith in supplements is officially over. We are moving firmly into the era of verified nutrition. The technological tools now exist through digital apps, biometric testing, and highly transparent labeling for you to know exactly what your body needs and exactly what you are putting into it.
So don't just blindly pop the pill. Actually, read the label, check the provenance of the source, and truly understand the massive machine that made it.
Yes. Be an active, informed participant in your own biology. If you are putting something in your body every single day, you should demand to know the hard evidence behind it.
I want to leave everyone with one final, slightly provocative thought that really struck me while reading the section on precision fermentation and robotics. We are constantly, loudly demanding natural products.
Yeah.
We want clean, earth-grown ingredients. But to actually get those ingredients pure enough, safe enough, and stable enough to sit quietly on a retail shelf,
We have to actively use the most unnatural, highly engineered processes imaginable.
exactly. It makes me wonder, is the most natural vitamin sitting on your shelf actually the most highly engineered object in your entire house? It's a paradox definitely worth chewing on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the vitamin machine.
Always a pleasure.